Chapter 4: The Uchiha Massacre. I, Itachi. The moon over Konoha that night was the color of bone. Itachi Uchiha stood on the tiled roof of the Nakano shrine and watched his village breathe. From here he could see the whole of the compound, the low wooden houses with their fan-painted eaves, the narrow lantern-lit streets, the koi pond behind the main house where his mother had taught him to skip stones when he was 4 years old. Somewhere down there, his father was sharpening a blade he would never draw. Somewhere down there, his mother was folding laundry. Somewhere down there, Sasuke was doing shuriken drills against a post in the yard, missing the center by a hair and swearing he would do better tomorrow. Tomorrow. Itachi closed his eyes. Behind his headband, the tomo of his Sharingan turned slowly, 3 points wheeling like the hands of a clock that had run out of hours. In his left hand he held a tanto, freshly oiled, the edge so keen it caught the moonlight and cut it in half. In the pocket of his ANBU vest was a scroll sealed with a crow feather. In the pocket over his heart was a folded letter, addressed to no one, that he had not been able to bring himself to write. He had asked for one thing. One. Spare Sasuke. Danzo had smiled, in that thin bloodless way of his, and said, of course. And more. Itachi had not understood then what and more meant. He understood now. Below him, at the western gate of the compound, 3 shadows detached themselves from the wall and became men. Root. Blank porcelain masks. No village insignia. No chakra signature that a normal sensor could catch. Danzo trained that out of them the way other men trained dogs not to bark. They moved through the compound in a pattern Itachi recognized from Foundation manuals he was not supposed to have read. Not a killing sweep. An extraction sweep. 2 operatives to a house, 1 at the door, 1 at the window. They were not entering yet. They were marking. Chalk symbols, invisible to anyone without a dojutsu, drawn low on the door frames. Itachi's Sharingan read them without effort. A circle, woman, no oath, take alive. A circle with a bar through it, woman, police force oath, kill. A triangle, child under academy age, take alive. A triangle with a dot, infant, take alive, priority. A square, adult male, kill. He counted the marks as they bloomed across the compound like a slow pox. Circle. Circle. Triangle. Square. Square. Triangle dot. Circle. Square. And more. Itachi understood now that Danzo had never intended to let the Uchiha end tonight. He had only intended to let the dangerous part of them end. The part that could vote in a council. The part that could lead a coup. The part that could remember. The women without oaths would wake tomorrow in a place they did not know, with kind hands feeding them rice, and be told that Itachi Uchiha had slaughtered their families in the night, and that a good old man had pulled them from the fire. The children would grow up in the east compound of the Foundation, on training mats, with a grandfather who never raised his voice. And in 10 years, in 15, when their Sharingan bloomed from grief they could not name, they would open those red eyes for Danzo Shimura, and they would call him sensei, and they would mean it. Itachi felt something in his chest go very cold, and very quiet. He had come here tonight to kill his clan to save his village. Danzo had come here tonight to harvest it. Aniki, Sasuke had said this morning, blinking sleep out of his eyes at the breakfast table, will you train with me today? Just for a little while? Tomorrow, Itachi had told him. I promise. He opened his eyes. The Mangekyo turned once behind the lids and settled. He stepped off the roof. The first house was his Uncle Taiki's. Circle on the door for Aunt Urichi. Square for Taiki. Itachi went in through the window his aunt always left cracked for the cat. Taiki was already turning, sensing him, kunai half drawn. Their eyes met. The old man's Sharingan flickered on out of a lifetime of reflex, and for one long second Itachi saw himself the way his uncle saw him, a boy in an ANBU vest, 13 years old, holding a tanto, with the wrong kind of eyes. Itachi, his uncle started. Itachi was already behind him. The cut was clean. He had promised himself, at least, that the cuts would be clean. And Urichi never woke up. He made sure of that too, a soft press of genjutsu, a hand on her temple, a dream of the sweets shop she ran on Sundays. He laid her back against the pillow. Her breathing evened. In the doorway, a Ruten mask watched him without expression, then stepped forward, lifted her from the futon like a sleeping child, and was gone through the window before the sheets had finished settling. Itachi stood in the middle of his uncle's bedroom with his uncle's blood on the floor and a piece of chalk dust on his sleeve where the root operative had brushed past him, and he thought, distantly, that this must be what it felt like to be a tool held by two hands at once. He moved to the next house. And the next. And the next. He did not let himself count. Counting was for after. He killed the men of his clan the way a good surgeon cuts, economically, without flourish, without hate. Where the root marks said kill, he killed. Where they said take alive, he stepped aside, and the porcelain masks flowed in behind him like water filling a footprint, and by the time he was 3 doors down the woman, or the child or the swaddled infant was already gone, carried west through the roofs toward a place he was not permitted to know. Twice he considered breaking the pattern. Twice he considered turning on the masks instead of on his own blood. Twice he thought of Sasuke, running to school with a rice ball in each cheek, and did not turn. A weapon, not a soldier, Danzo had said, in that dry admiring voice. Itachi understood now that Danzo had not been describing him. Danzo had been describing what he would become by the time the sun came up. He killed his mother in the kitchen. She was at the stove. She had been heating water for tea because she had known, somehow, the way mothers always know, that he would come home tonight and that he would need something warm in his hands. She turned when he entered. She looked at his face. She looked at the tanto. She looked at his face again, and her Sharingan did not activate, because she did not want the last thing she saw of her son to be through those eyes. Take care of your brother, she said. He did. He killed his father in the front room, sitting Saiza, blade across his knees, the way a clan head dies when he has known for a week that the knock at the door was coming. Fugaku did not speak. He only nodded, once, and closed his eyes, and it was Itachi who cried. He did not hear the root masks come in behind him. He did not have to. He heard the soft rustle of cloth as they lifted his mother from the kitchen floor, carefully, respectfully, the way one lifts a body one intends to display later, and he heard one of them murmur, in a voice trained to have no accent, priority carry. Foundation medic on standby. His mother was still breathing. Itachi turned his head, very slowly. The porcelain mask tilted, met his eyes, and did not flinch. Danzo-sama's orders, the mask said. All non-oath women, alive if recoverable. She is recoverable. Something in Itachi's chest that had been holding itself very still for 3 hours finally cracked. He almost killed the mask. He almost killed all of them. He almost walked west through the roofs, and found the hidden place, and burned it down to the foundation stones and salted the ash and dared Danzo Shimura to come and stop him. Instead he thought of Sasuke, coming home from the academy in 6 hours, opening the door and calling Ka-san, I'm home, to an empty house. He turned back to his father's body. He wiped his blade on his father's sleeve. He said, without turning around, if she wakes and asks for her sons, tell her both of them are dead. It will be kinder. Understood, the mask said. They took his mother out through the door his father had left unlocked. By the time Sasuke's footsteps rang on the stones of the compound path, small, running, wrong-tempoed footsteps, a child who had felt something in the air on his way home from a friend's house and started running without knowing why, the root operatives were gone. Every chalk mark had been wiped clean. Every extraction had been made. What was left in the compound was what Danzo had wanted left in the compound, bodies of men, bodies of oath-bound women, and one 13-year-old boy standing in a pool of his father's blood with the Mangekyo in his eyes. Itachi heard his brother coming. He set his face. He became a monster, because a monster was the only shape that would fit through the door his brother was about to open. 2. Sasuke. Sasuke Uchiha was 7 years old, and he had never been afraid of the dark before tonight. He had stayed late at Naori's house because they had been arguing about which shuriken grip was better, and it was important. And then he had looked at the clock and it had been nearly 11 and his mother was going to be so angry, and he had run out the door with his sandals half on and his jacket unzipped and taken the shortcut through the back alleys of the compound. The lanterns were out. That was the first thing. The Uchiha lanterns were always lit. His father said a compound with dark lanterns was a compound that had forgotten itself, and tonight every single one of them was dark. Not blown out. Cut. The paper shades slashed clean across, the candles inside guttered to nothing. The second thing was the silence. There were no crickets. No dogs. No wind in the eaves. Just his own breathing, and the soft slap of his sandals on the stone path, going faster now, faster, until he was running. Ka-san, he was going to call, when he got to the door. He never got to. He rounded the last corner, and there was a man in the road. Not a man. His Aunt Jiruchi's neighbor, Yashiro Jizan, who owned a little bookshop and always gave him a caramel when he came in. Yashiro Jizan was lying on his side in the middle of the path with his eyes open and his mouth open and something dark pooling out from underneath him, and there was a shuriken buried to the ring in the wood of the doorframe above him, and Sasuke stopped running and stood very still and heard, for the first time in his life, the sound his own heart made when it forgot how to beat. He walked the rest of the way to his house. He did not remember deciding to. The door was open. The light in the front room was on. He stepped inside, and he saw his mother, and he saw his father, and he saw the blood on the tatame, so much of it, more than he had thought a person could hold, and he saw the shape of his brother standing in the middle of it with a sword in his hand. "Foolish little brother," his brother said. The world tilted. Sasuke's eyes burned. He did not know, then, that they were changing. He did not know that behind the tears something was waking up inside him, one tomo, small and trembling, in each eye. He only knew that his brother was speaking to him in a voice he had never heard before, a voice like a stone dropped down a well, and that the voice was saying terrible things, not strong enough, not worth killing, hate me, live in shame, run, 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 and that a red moon had opened in the ceiling above him and the world inside it was full of his family dying, over and over, in slow motion, forever. Why, Sasuke tried to say. It came out as nothing. Why? He ran. He ran the way small animals run from forest fires, blind, straight, screaming, through the compound and out the west gate and down the main road toward the Hokage Tower, and behind him his brother did not follow, because his brother had already done what he came to do. 3. Izumi. Izumi Uchiha came home over the north wall a little after dawn. She had been on a C-rank courier run to the land of hot water, 3 days out, 2 days back, a scroll in her pack and a bruise on her hip from where a bandit had tried to be clever on the second night. She was 14 years old. She wore her hair in a long braid down her back because her mother said it made her look like a proper kunoichi, and she wore 2 hair sticks through it because her father said a proper kunoichi always had a knife her enemy could not see. She was tired. She was hungry. She was thinking about her mother's miso and about the boy on the ANBU roster she was definitely not thinking about, and she vaulted the north wall of the Uchiha compound with a little flourish, because no one was watching, and because she had missed being home. She landed in the main courtyard. The lanterns were out. She stood very still, one hand still on the strap of her pack, and for a long moment she did not understand what she was looking at, because the shapes on the stones did not resolve into anything her mind was willing to name. Then the wind shifted and she smelled it. Iron. Sweet, old, thick. The smell of a butcher's shop left open in summer. No, Izumi said out loud, to no one. She walked. She did not run. Running was for people who still had somewhere to run to. She walked, in the careful stride of a shinobi who has been trained to keep breathing, across the courtyard, past the koi pond. The koi were dead, floating pale on the water. Someone had thrown a kunai through the biggest one, past the Yashiro bookshop, Yashiro Jizan in the doorway, eyes open, past the Anabi house, door open, no one home. Chalk dust on the frame that she did not know how to read, and down her own street, and to her own door. Her mother was in the kitchen. Her father was in the hall. She did not go into her little brother's room. She stood in the doorway and she looked, and then she closed the door very softly, the way you close a door on a child who has finally fallen asleep, and she went back out into the street, and she sat down on the stone step of her own house, and she put her forehead on her knees, and she did not cry, because she had been trained not to, and because there was no one left in the compound to hear her if she did. That was where the ANBU found her, an hour later, when they came through to count the dead. The captain, the same cap-masked woman who had carried a red-haired boy out of a fish market 3 months ago, crouched down in front of her and said, very gently, Izumi-san. Can you stand? Izumi lifted her head. Her Sharingan was on. She did not remember turning it on. 2 tomo in each eye, sharp as new coins, seeing everything and understanding none of it. Where were you? She said. Her voice was level. It was the voice her father had taught her to use when she was reporting to a superior officer, and she was reporting now, because it was the only voice she had left. On the border, Cat said, and Izumi could hear, under the porcelain, that Cat was ashamed. Where were you? Izumi said again, to no one, to the compound, to the sky, to her clan. Nothing answered. The Hokage will want to speak with you, Cat said. You are, Izumi-san, listen to me. You are the last active kunoichi of your clan. Do you understand what that means? Izumi laughed. It was a small sound. It was not a good sound. Cat flinched behind her mask. I understand, Izumi said. It means I am the last person who is going to remember them correctly. She stood up. She walked past Cat, past the 2 ANBU standing at parade rest at the gate, past the medic Nin unrolling a body bag in the courtyard, past the koi pond and the dead lanterns and the Yashiro bookshop, and out the west gate of the compound. She did not look back. She did not know, yet, that a 7-year-old boy named Sasuke had run out this same gate 6 hours before her, and that he was in the Hokage's hospital right now, drugged into a sleep that would not hold his dreams. She did not know that somewhere in a hidden compound east of the village, her cousin Naori, who she had trained with last week, who had a laugh like a bell, was drinking warm rice porridge from a bowl held by a kind old man with one visible eye. She did not know that another red-haired boy, in another hospital bed, in another wing of the same building she was walking toward, had woken 3 months ago from his own long night and asked old man, where were you? She was going to know, all of it, eventually. For now she only knew this. She was 14 years old. She was the last Uchiha kunoichi on the active roster. Her Sharingan had 2 tomo, and she was going to make it 3. And then she was going to make it something else, something worse, something with a name. And she was going to find out who had done this. And she was going to make them answer for it. Behind her, the sun came up over the compound she had grown up in, and lit every dark lantern like a candle at a wake. Chapter 5, What the Living Owe. The Hokage's office. The office smelled like old paper and older smoke. Izumi Uchiha stood in the center of the rug with her hands at her sides, back straight, Hitai 8 still tied at her forehead from the road. There was blood on her sandals. Not hers. She had walked through the compound before ANBU could stop her, and the compound had not been kind to the soles of her feet. Hiruzen sat behind the desk. He looked older than he had 2 days ago. That was fair. Everyone did. Izumi-chan, he said. Gentle. The voice adults used on children who had lost something. Please. Sit. No, thank you, Hokage-sama. Koharu was in the corner. Hamura by the window. 2 ANBUs she couldn't see but could feel, one at 4 o'clock, one above the ceiling beam. She catalogued them without moving her eyes. 2 tomo in each eye. Not spinning. Just awake. Izumi. Hiruzen tried again. The council has agreed. You will be placed in protective custody until. No. The room went very quiet. I am 14, Izumi said. Her voice was flat as river stone. I am a chunin of Konoha. I am, as of the night before last, the last active duty kunoichi of the Uchiha clan. I am not a child to be locked in a safe house, Hokage-sama. With respect. Izumi. I want 3 things. Hamura's head turned. You want, Kohara said, and there was iron in it. Child, you are in no position. I am in exactly the position. Izumi did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Every adult of my clan is dead. Every man. Every woman with a police oath. The compound is empty except for what your ANBU are still washing out of the tatame. If you want an Uchiha alive in this village to point at when Kumo asks whether the Sharingan still exists in Konoha, then you will listen to the one you have. Hiruzen closed his eyes for a long moment. Speak, he said. 1. Izumi lifted a finger. I want the survivor list. I know there is one. I walked through 11 houses on the way here. Aunt Yuruchi's shoes were gone from the Genkan. Niorio Basin's baby crib was empty and the blanket was folded. Uchiha do not fold blankets when they are being murdered, Hokage-sama. Someone took them. I want to know who, and I want to know where. Koharu's jaw tightened. Hamura did not move at all, which was its own answer. 2. I want a Jonin sensei assigned to me personally. Not a team. Me. I am behind. Itachi was. Her voice caught, just for a heartbeat, and then even out. Itachi was a prodigy and I am not. If I am to be the wall that keeps the last of my clan alive, I need to be taller than I am. I want Kenjutsu. I want Fuinjutsu access, the archive, not the summaries. I want a stipend to feed the survivors when you give them back to me, because I know that you will. Izumi-chan. Hiruzen began. 3. She did not lower the hand. I want Sasuke. Hiruzen went still. My parents' house is intact. My mother and father were on the mission roster with me. They came back an hour behind me and they are downstairs in your morgue and I have not been allowed to see them yet, but the house is intact. Sasuke is 7 years old and his brother killed his family in front of him, and you are going to put him in an apartment. Alone. Izumi. With respect, Hokage-sama. Her Sharingan did not spin. It did not have to. He is my cousin. My mother was his mother's cousin. I have known him since he could walk. He will stay with me, in my parents' house, and I will raise him, and you will pay for it, because the alternative is that the last Uchiha boy in this village grows up alone in a room and learns that Konoha lets Uchiha grow up alone in rooms. We already have one of those. We do not need 2. The silence after was the kind that had weight. Hamura spoke first, quietly. The child has thought about this. The child, Izumi said, walked from the north wall to this office and had nothing else to think about. Hiruzen looked at her for a very long time. Then he reached across the desk, picked up a brush, and wrote 3 lines on a piece of paper without saying anything. He stamped it. He held it out. She took it. She did not bow. There is a 4th thing, Hiruzen said, softly, that you have not asked yet. And you should ask it, because you will not sleep until you do. Izumi's hand tightened around the paper. She already knew. She had known from the moment she walked through her aunt's house and saw the angle of the cut on Uncle Taiki's throat. Clean. Right-handed. Tanto, not kanai. Someone who had been trained by Uchiha Fugaku to kill Uchiha efficiently, because Fugaku had trained exactly one person like that. Who? She said. It was not a question. It was a formality. Hiruzen did not look away from her. Itachi, he said. Izumi's Sharingan spun. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Alone? Alone. You are lying, Hokage-sama. The ANBU at 4 o'clock shifted, just slightly. Hiruzen raised one finger, and the shift stopped. I am telling you what the village will be told, Izumi-chan. His voice was very tired. I am telling you what I can prove. If you have questions about the rest, bring them to me. To me. Not to the council. Not to a training ground at night. To me. Do you understand what I am asking? She understood exactly what he was asking. He was asking her not to die the way her clan had died, chasing something bigger than her with her mouth open. I understand, Hokage-sama. Good. She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. The survivors, she said without looking back. Where are they? The East Compound, Hiruzen said. Under advisory care. Whose? A pause. Danzo's. Izumi closed her eyes. Then she opened them and walked out, and she did not slam the door, because slamming the door would have told him how she felt, and she was not in the business of telling anyone how she felt anymore. 2. The hospital corridor. Sasuke was sitting on a bench outside room 4 with his knees pulled up to his chest. He had not spoken since dawn. The nurse had put a blanket around his shoulders and he had not moved to hold it, so it had slid down and pulled at his waist. There was still blood in the creases of his palms. Someone had wiped his face but not his hands. Small mercies, poorly distributed. The corridor was too bright. The fluorescent buzz sat behind his eyes like a second heartbeat. Every time he blinked, the world turned red for half a second and then corrected itself, and he did not know yet that this was going to be a thing that happened for the rest of his life. Footsteps. He did not look up. Footsteps had been happening for hours. Nurses. Doctors. An old man he did not recognize who had sat next to him for a while, and then left without saying anything. Anbu pretending to be walls. These footsteps stopped in front of him. Sasuke. He knew that voice. He looked up. Izumi's hair was longer than he remembered. She had a paper in her hand and her hitae was still on her forehead, and there was dried mud on the hem of her flak jacket. Her eyes were black. She had turned the Sharingan off before coming in. Small mercies, better distributed. Izumi nay, he said. His voice cracked on the second syllable. He had not used it in a while. She sat down next to him on the bench. Not across from him. Next to him. Close enough that their shoulders touched through the blanket. I'm sorry I wasn't here, she said. He didn't say anything. I was on a mission with my parents. We were 3 hours out. If I had been closer, you would be dead, Sasuke said. Flatly. It was the first sentence he had spoken since dawn, and it came out like something he had rehearsed. Like everyone. Izumi was quiet. My mom told me to run, Sasuke said. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the wall opposite, at a poster about hand-washing. She was all ready, she was on the floor. And she told me to run. And I ran. And Ni-san. Sasuke. Ni-san was standing there. In the room. With them. His hands started to shake. He did not seem to notice. He said he was testing his capacity. He said I was too weak to kill. He said. Sasuke, stop. He said hate him. He said get strong and come find him and hate him and... Sasuke. He stopped. She put her hand on the back of his neck. Warm. Steady. Not squeezing. Just there. The way her mother used to do to her when she was small and the thunder was too loud. You are going to come home with me, she said. He looked at her for the first time. My parents' house is fine, she said. Aunt Makoto's house is, you can't go back there. Not yet. Not for a long time. But my house is fine and my mother's clothes are still in the closet and her tea is still in the tin and I need someone to help me drink it before it goes stale. Do you understand me? His eyes were red. Not Sharingan red. Just red. You want me to live with you? I want you to live, she said. With me? Yes. Hokage Gigi said I would have an apartment. Hokage Gigi is a coward who signs papers instead of holding children. She said it evenly, without heat, the way you would describe the weather. You are not going to an apartment. You are going home with me. I already asked? He already said yes. Look. She showed him the paper. He didn't read it. He was 7 and he had not blinked in a while. Izumi nay. Yeah. Nissan killed them. I know. Nissan killed them. I know, Sasuke. His face broke. It was not a loud thing. He did not scream. He just folded forward, into her side, into the flak jacket that still smelled like road dust and pine, and he made a sound that was smaller than a sob and larger than a breath, and Izumi wrapped her arm around him and held the back of his head and did not tell him it was going to be okay because she was 14, and she had 2 dead parents downstairs, and she was not going to lie to him on the first day. She said instead, "You are not alone." She said it again. "You are not alone, Sasuke. You are not alone. You are not alone." She said it until his shaking slowed. Down the corridor, an ANBU mask watched from a doorframe, and after a minute the mask turned and walked away, because there was nothing in that hallway that needed guarding anymore. 3. What Naruto heard. 2 floors up and 1 wing over, Naruto Uzumaki was awake. He had been awake for a while. He had learned, in the last 3 days, that if you kept your eyes closed, and your breathing slow, the nurses would talk over you like you were furniture, and furniture hurt a lot. He was on his side, facing the wall. The bandages on his ribs itched. The bandages on his back itched worse. His hair was the wrong color against the white pillow, too red, too much of it, tangled where they hadn't been able to wash it out yet because of the stitches at his temple. He was 8 years old, and he weighed less than he had a week ago, and there was a chakra suppressor tag on the bed frame 6 inches from his face, and he had not stopped noticing it once. The nurses were at the door. 2 of them. Shift change. Whole clan, Ayaka. The whole clan. Keep your voice down. There's nobody in this room but the... A pause. But the patient, and he's asleep. Look at him. Still. The voice dropped. Not enough. They're saying it was the older boy. The prodigy. Itachi. That can't be right. It's what Rin records heard. 1 man. 1 night. His whole clan. 1 man doesn't do that. 1 Uchiha does, apparently. Don't. I'm just saying what I heard. A rustle of a chart. How many? All of them. Or almost. There's the girl. Izumi. She was on a mission. And the little one, Sasuke, and a handle full of non-combatants, that's it. And you know what the worst part is? What? Nobody in the village cares. I walked to work this morning and the tea shop was open. The tea shop, Ayaka. Like nothing happened. Like 100 people didn't. She stopped. Then, quieter. They hated the Uchiha. That's what it is. They hated them for the 9 Tails night, and they hated them for the police, and they hated them for the eyes, and now they're gone, and nobody's crying. Nobody. Except the boy and the survivors. Which boy? The little one. Sasuke. He's on the 4th floor. They said he just sits there. Doesn't talk. Doesn't eat. Someone said his cousin came for him. Poor thing. Poor thing. A sigh. You know what I keep thinking? What? It could have been anyone. It could have been any clan. Any of us. 1 night. 1 person decides. And the village just Opens the shop the next morning. A long silence. Come on. Rounds. The door swung. The footsteps went. Naruto lay very still. He had never met Itachi Uchiha. He had seen the little one once, at the academy entrance ceremony, from across a courtyard, a dark-haired boy standing very straight next to a woman with kind eyes. He had thought, he has a mom. He had thought it the way you think about a color you are not allowed to wear. Now the woman with the kind eyes was dead. And the tea shop was open. Something happened behind Naruto's sternum. It was not the chains. The chains were quiet, coiled somewhere below his ribs where the seal was, resting the way a dog rests with one eye open. This was smaller than that. This was a very slow, very cold understanding, arriving in a room that had been waiting for it. It wasn't just me. He had thought on his birthday, when the men with the broken bottle had cornered him behind the shrine and the woman with the kitchen knife had smiled, he had thought it was because of him. Because of what he was. Because there was something wrong with Naruto Uzumaki specifically that made a village decide, one night a year, that it was allowed. But the Uchiha had not been him. The Uchiha had not been anything the village said he was. The Uchiha had been 100 people with a police force and a district and lanterns at their gates, and the village had opened the tea shop anyway. It wasn't him. It was the village. The village was the thing that was wrong. He opened his eyes. The wall was very white. The suppressor tag was still 6 inches from his face. He looked at it for a long time and did not move. Somewhere far below him, a chain uncoiled one link and lay still again. The doctor came in at 4th bell. Uzumaki-kun. Good news. Hokage-sama has signed your discharge. Naruto sat up. He did it slowly, because the ribs still hurt, but he did it without help, which was new. The doctor pretended not to notice that he did not need the offered hand. Your apartment has been prepared. There will be an ANBU escort as far as the door. After that, the doctor hesitated. After that, Hokage-sama has asked that you come see him when you feel ready. Not before. When you feel ready? He was very specific. Naruto put his feet on the floor. The tile was cold. He had expected that. Okay, he said. The doctor blinked. It was the first thing the boy had said in 2 days. Do you have any questions, Uzumaki-kun? Naruto looked at the suppressor tag on the bed frame. Then he looked up at the doctor. His eyes were very blue and very flat, and the doctor, who had seen a great many things in a great many wards, felt something cold settle behind his own collarbone. No, Naruto said. I don't have any questions. He got dressed by himself. He tied his sandals by himself. He walked to the door by himself. At the threshold he paused, and looked back at the room once, at the bed, at the tag, at the window with its view of the Hokage monument, and the 4 stone faces that had watched over a village where the tea shop opened the morning after 100 people died. Then he stepped out into the corridor, and he did not look back again. Outside, the sun was setting over Konoha, and the lanterns were coming on one by one along the main road, and somewhere on the 4th floor a girl with 2 tomo in each eye was helping a boy her cousin had left behind put on his sandals to go home. 3 children. 3 doors closing at the same time. The village did not notice. The village never did. Chapter 6, Vows in the Dark. The apartment. Naruto sat on the floor of his apartment with the lights off and the door locked. The hospital had released him that morning. The doctor had smiled, patted his shoulder, and said the Hokage wanted to see him when he was ready. Naruto had nodded, taken his discharge papers, and walked out without answering. The old man could wait. The old man could always wait. He didn't remember much about the night of the fox hunt. There was rain, and mud, and the sound of his own heartbeat getting louder and louder until it was the only thing in his ears. Then there were shapes, bright, burning shapes that moved like they were alive, wrapping around his wrists and snapping out into the dark. People had screamed. He had screamed too, maybe. After that, nothing. He looked at his hands now. Small, scabbed across the knuckles, still faintly bruised from the hospital floor. They were just hands. Whatever had come out of him that night was gone, buried so deep he couldn't even feel the echo of it. He had tried, sitting on the hospital bed, to make it happen again, pushing chakra down his arms, squeezing his fists, whispering come back in his head. Nothing. Not a spark, not a chain, not a whisper. So he couldn't count on it. Whatever it wasn't a weapon he could choose. That left him with what he could choose. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and filled a cup of water from the tap. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. In the hospital there had been nurses, footsteps, the clatter of trays. Here there was only the hum of the refrigerator, and the distant sound of the village going about its day as if nothing had happened. As if an 8-year-old boy hadn't been beaten half to death in an alley. As if the Uchiha clan hadn't been folded up and thrown away overnight. Naruto drank the water slowly, deliberately, like he was proving he could. The old man had come to his bedside after the fox hunt. He'd looked sad, sounded gentle, promised that the responsible parties would be dealt with. Naruto had believed it then, half-conscious and stupid. But the village had opened its shops the next morning. The nurses had talked about the Uchiha massacre like it was weather. And when Naruto had asked one of them, carefully, if the people who hurt him were in jail, she had looked away and changed the subject. So much for dealt with. The old man wasn't a grandfather anymore. He was just the Hokage, the man who sat at the top of the village and let things happen. Naruto didn't hate him, not the way Sasuke probably hated Itachi right now. Hate was hot, and Naruto didn't have the energy for hot. What he felt was colder. Flatter. You're not on my side. I won't forget that. He finished the water and set the cup down. He needed a plan. Not a grand one. Not defeat the mob, or make the village pay. He was 8. He was small. He was alone. Grand plans got you killed. So small plans? First, the academy. He'd been screwing around. Throwing paper airplanes, sleeping through lectures, failing tests on purpose because the teachers already looked at him like he was a waste of space. That stopped. He would sit in the front. He would listen. He would learn the kata names, the hand seal order, the chakra pathway basics, the stupid history that might actually matter if he paid attention. Let them hate him. He didn't need them to like him. He needed them to teach him. Second, his body. Push-ups. Sit-ups. Running laps around the apartment block before dawn. Climbing the fence behind the training ground until his palms bled and then climbing it again. If he couldn't make the chains come back, he would make his fists hard enough that the next time someone grabbed him, he wouldn't need chains. Third, keep his mouth shut. No more crying in front of nurses. No more asking the Hokage for help. No more telling people he was scared. The village didn't help boys like him. It watched, and it waited, and sometimes it sent mobs. The only person who was going to keep Naruto alive was Naruto. He went to the closet and found his old notebook, the one with the orange cover and the scribbled drawings on the back. He tore out a page and flattened it on the floor. In careful, blocky letters he wrote: 1. Academy first. 2. Body second. 3. No one else. He stared at it for a long moment, then added one more line. 4. Remember who didn't help. He folded the paper and put it under his mattress, where he used to hide candy. Then he changed into an old shirt and shorts, left the apartment, and started running. The evening air was cool. The street lamps flickered on as he passed them, one by one, like the village was trying to be welcoming. Naruto didn't look at them. He kept his eyes on the road ahead and his breathing steady, counting his steps in his head. 1 lap. 2. 3. By the 4th, his lungs burned and his legs shook. He didn't stop. He slowed down, but he didn't stop. That was the rule he was making for himself now. You could be slow. You could be stupid. You could be small and hated and alone. But you didn't stop. Not for the mob. Not for the old man. Not for the ache in your chest that said nobody was coming to save you. He was going to save himself. Even if it took years. Even if it took everything. 2. The Uchiha House. 2 districts east, in a compound where every lantern but one was dark, Izumi Uchiha carried a bowl of rice she had made from muscle memory down a hallway she had walked 10,000 times and set it on the low table in front of a boy who had not spoken since dawn. Sasuke didn't look at the bowl. He was sitting Saiza on the tatami in her father's study, because she had run out of rooms to try. The living room had a stain on the wood from where Yashiro Jizan had bled out in the afternoon. Someone from the cleanup detail had wiped it, badly, and it had dried in a shape she was going to have to sand out tomorrow. Sasuke had walked into that room, seen the shape without being told what it was, and walked out. The kitchen had her mother's apron on the peg. Sasuke had walked into the kitchen, seen the apron, and walked out. The guest room had a futon that smelled like Aunt Uruchi because Aunt Uruchi had stayed over 3 weeks ago for the equinox. Sasuke had lain down on that futon for exactly 4 seconds and then stood up and left the room without a word. The study didn't smell like anyone. The study was books and dust and her father's cold pipe and the calligraphy scroll Izumi had done at 9 that he had, embarrassingly, framed. Sasuke had walked into the study, looked at the framed scroll for a long time, and sat down. She would take it. She would take a room he could sit in. She knelt across the table from him. Not close. Close was for later, if there was a later. She set the bowl down. She set chopsticks next to the bowl. She set a cup of barley tea, cooled to lukewarm because hot things were, right now, a category of pain she wasn't going to add to his night, next to the chopsticks. Then she folded her hands in her lap and waited, because Izumi Uchiha at 14 had already learned, on 3 missions and 1 funeral, that the first rule of sitting with the wrecked was you did not fill their silence with your noise. The lantern above them hummed. Outside the paper screen a moth beat itself, methodically, against the light. She counted the moth. It gave her something to do with the part of her brain that wanted to scream. Sasuke's hands were on his thighs. Someone at the hospital, the nurse, probably, kind and stupid, had washed them, but they hadn't gotten under the nails, and the half-moons of him were still rust-brown. His hakama was borrowed. His shirt was borrowed. His hair was flat on one side from the pillow at the hospital and standing straight up on the other from something she didn't want to picture. His eyes were black again. The mangekyo he'd had at dawn had folded itself back down at some point during the day, either from exhaustion or from mercy, and she was not going to ask which. She had told him, in the entryway, 1 sentence. I asked Hokage-sama. You live here now. He had nodded, once, like a man signing a form. He had not spoken since. 2 hours in the study now. The moth. The lantern. The rice going cold. She was about to give up on the rice and try water when he said it. Not loud. Not to her. To the framed scroll on the wall, or to himself, or to something below the floor. He smiled at me. Izumi did not move. When he... Sasuke's throat worked. His hands, on his thighs, curled slowly into fists, and the rust under his nails deepened as the skin around them went white. When he pushed me against the wall. In the... He couldn't find the word for the room. She watched him not find it. She did not help. He smiled at me. He said I was too weak to kill. He said I should hate him. He said I should... A breath. Live in an unsightly way. He said that. He said it like it was a gift. The moth. The lantern. He killed Oka-san, Sasuke said. His voice cracked on the word the way a dropped bowl cracks, not shattering, just splitting, the pieces still holding their shape. He killed Ota-san. He killed Uruchio Basin and Tekka Jizan and Yashiro Jizan and... His face did something Izumi would remember for the rest of her life, a kind of collapsing that stopped halfway because there was nowhere left in him for it to fall to. He killed everyone. Nei-san. He killed everyone and he smiled at me and he let me live. His fists on his thighs were shaking now. I want to kill him, Sasuke said. He said it the way a child says I want water. Simple. Absolute. A fact of the body. He was 7 years old, and he had just watched his entire world be unmade in one night by the person he had loved most in it, and the hate coming up out of him was not the hot bright thing hate is in stories. It was cold, and it was patient, and it had already found the shape of the rest of his life. I want to kill him, he said again, testing it, and this time his eyes came up and found hers, and they were black, but the black had a red flicker at the very edge, one Tomo trying to turn and not quite managing it, and Izumi understood, the way you understand, on a mission, that the shape in the trees is not a deer, that Sasuke Uchiha at 7 had already decided what he was for. She let the sentence sit between them on the low table next to the cold rice. Then she said quiet, level, the way her Jonin captain had taught her to answer a genin who had just made a bad call in the field. Don't argue with the feeling. Argue with the plan. Okay. Sasuke's breath caught. Okay? He said. Almost angry. Almost hopeful. Almost either, because he didn't have enough left in him for either. Okay, Izumi said again. She uncurled her hands from her lap and put them, palms down, flat on the table between them, because she needed him to see them and know they were steady. You want to kill him? Fine. That's the goal. Goals are good. Goals are better than nothing, and nothing is what most people have at the end of a night like yours, so you're already ahead. He was staring at her hands. But Sasuke. She waited until his eyes came up. He's 14. He's A&BU captain. He killed 100 of us in one night and walked out. You're 7. You can't hit a target from 10 meters. If you go after him tomorrow, or next month, or next year, you die, and then he wins twice, once for killing them and once for making you the last thing he killed. Do you understand me? He did. She saw it land. His jaw set. So we don't do that, Izumi said. We do the other thing. What other thing? Sasuke said. Barely a whisper. We get strong enough that when you find him, he doesn't smile. She let that sit. I'm 14. I'm Chunin track. I've got 2 Tomo in each eye and a Jonin sensei I'm about to make Hokage-sama assign me and a clan library nobody's using anymore and a house with 2 bedrooms and a training ground out back that my father built for me when I was your age. I'm going to teach you everything I know. Everything my father taught me. Everything my sensei teaches me from tomorrow on. Katon. Kenjutsu. Genjutsu, when your eyes are ready. Everything. She kept her hands flat. She kept her voice flat. She was not going to cry in front of him tonight. She had cried on the north wall at dawn, and she had cried in the Hokage's office in her head, and she was going to cry again later, in her own room, into a pillow that still smelled like her mother's laundry soap. But not here, not now, not at this table. And when the academy takes you back, she said, you go. You sit in the front row. You be the best in the class. Not for pride. For cover. Nobody watches a top student the way they watch a broken one. Do you understand? He nodded. One small nod. A soldier's nod. And when you come home, she said, and her voice did crack, just a little, on the word home, because she was giving him one and she had not entirely believed until this second that she was allowed to. You come home here, and you eat what I cook, even if it's bad, and you sleep in the room across the hall from mine, and you tell me when it gets loud in your head, and I will help you carry it. Not fix it. Carry it. There's a difference. Anyone who says they can fix this for you is lying, and I'm not going to lie to you. Not tonight, and not ever. Okay? His eyes were wet. He wasn't crying. His eyes were just, finally, allowed to be wet. Okay, he said. Say it back to me, she said. The plan. So I know you heard it. He swallowed. His voice was thin as paper. But it came. Get strong. Be the best in class. Come home. Tell you when it's loud. A breath. Kill him when I can win. Kill him when you can win. Izumi agreed, and the sentence landed on the table between them like a stone laid on a grave, and something in both of them, for the first time since dawn, was able to sit down next to it and rest. She pushed the bowl of rice 1 inch closer to him. He looked at it. He looked at her. He picked up the chopsticks. His hands were still shaking, but not as much, and he ate. Not all of it. 6 bites. Slow. The way a person eats when the eating is the promise, not the meal. When he set the chopsticks down, she stood up and held out her hand. Come on, she said. The room across the hall. I already put sheets on the futon. They're my old ones, so they've got little cranes on them, and you're going to make fun of me for it when you're older, and that's fine, but tonight you're sleeping on cranes and you don't get a vote. He almost smiled. It didn't get to his mouth. It got to somewhere just behind his eyes and stopped, exhausted, but it got that far, and Izumi, who had been braced for the possibility that nothing would ever get that far in him again, felt her chest unclench 1 notch for the first time in 18 hours. He took her hand. His fingers were cold and rust-brown and too small. She led him down the hall past her father's study and her mother's apron and the badly cleaned stain in the living room, and she put him to bed on cranes, and she sat on the floor beside the futon with her back against the wall, and she did not leave. At some point after midnight his breathing evened out. At some point after that, in the dark, without opening his eyes, he said, Nei-san. Promise. She knew what he meant. She would have known in any language. I promise, Izumi Uchiha said, to the last Uchiha boy in Konoha, in a house that had been full at breakfast and was 2 people at midnight. Any way I can. I promise. Outside, the moth found the crack in the screen and went free into the dark. Inside, 2 children who had each, in 1 week, been handed the shape of the rest of their lives slept. End of chapter 6.